go ahead and call the meeting to order. If you'll join me in a moment of silent prayer reflection. Thank you. Roll call.
Pepperoni?
Here.
Madison?
Here.
You join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do I have a motion to review and accept the agenda?
So moved. Second.
John Maston?
Yes.
Pat Rooney?
Yes.
Alan Ward?
Yes.
Kathy Cox?
Yes.
Nicole Cohen?
Yes. Okay, we are going to start our work session. I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Sider. Thank you.
Thank you. As we look at the opening of the agenda, we did have some recognition. Tiffany Berry, who is a teacher at Havasu, was the state VFW Teacher of the Year. And so we will have a presentation for her, and hopefully Mr. Sanders will be there to present that.
That's why I'm here. The VFW gentleman will be here to do the presentation because I am at the Principals in the Law Conference. And if it gets over and I can get out of there by 2:30, I will be here, which I'm going to really push.
And if not, if you can just give us some information. Do you know the name of the person who's going to be here?
Yeah, I'll have it all written up for you and everything. Also, we have purchased a plaque for the board president to give, or yourself to give to Mrs. Berry through the school. So we will all be set on everything for you.
Thank you. And then we also are going to have a certificate for the Lake Havasu Realtors Association for the appreciation of all of the donation. Even though they were here last time and shared that information, we'll have a final amount of this very large donation. And then, of course, our LHCEA. Moving to the consent agenda. Item 4.1 are three sections of minutes: the regular session from August 15th, the special session from August 1st, and the work session from August 8th.
On that item 4.1.7, I would like to move that from the consent calendar to new business.
Can we get the talk about that?
Sure.
Oh, I thought you had just gone on to the consent calendar.
Just on 4.1.
We're going through the
Oh, we're
consent.
going through it, okay.
So we have those three sets of minutes if you have any questions. And then on, of course, 4.1.2 is the approval of the agenda as printed. 4.1.3 is the personnel report. .1.4 are our gifts and donations. And the Association of Realtors it's listed as 10,000, but I thought that Hal had given us more information on that amount. Just so. On 4.1.6, this is an exhibit, and this is for professional staff supplementary pay plans. So it is coming here on the consent for approval, which is what we typically do with these exhibits. There's some corrections in that.
About that. I think supplemental the year in writing and does not take the following year needs to notify the principal in writing no later than May 1st. Who is responsible for letting the principals and those teachers know? I mean, I can see that someone doesn't realize that. A teacher doesn't realize that they have not notified their principal that they what they plan to do it again next year, and the principal has since the person. I mean, I just don't want there to be a lawsuit or a complaint. And as principal, I often found that these kinds of things got dropped. They were never.
So either the principal didn't let the person know they weren't planning for them to continue, or the teacher didn't let the principal know they weren't planning to continue.
And usually these people keep their job year after year after year, and then there's no habit, there's no procedure that, in the institution to take care of that, and it's a matter of communication when these things go awry, I find.
Well, I would think that this probably needs to be brought to both Mary Jo and Scott's attention so that they are aware of this, and as well to Brady Krieger's attention as the athletic director, because he would be overseeing those coaches. So I think that needs
Did
to be
they
brought.
actually sign an additional supplemental on their contract?
Not on their contract, it's a separate stipend.
Okay, so they signed that, and so those are offered every year? So they would certainly know if they didn't get offered one.
Right.
But then if they signed it and they weren't intending to go forward, that would also be an issue of breach of contract.
Is it signed at the same time as the contract, or is that something
No,
that's
it's
signed
not
way
done.
later?
It's way later.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's signed later.
And I would say that there's probably communication with these people and their principals ahead of time, knowing whether they're not planning on doing it. I think it would be the piece about the principal choosing not to offer it again, it would be the stickler.
And it's the date that makes it a stickler.
Right.
May 1st. Is that what you counted, May
Yeah,
1st?
well,
And that could be something we can put on our
And that's
ITM agenda and talk about.
Because most of the stipends take place in the fall of the new school year, so that's quite a time span.
It's just something I wanted to remember. And then something to consider, and Scott's not here, but the student government teacher has a class, and so she's paid as part of the teaching contract. But if you look at the student government advisor, he is one of the busiest people in the school, and in charge of so many things, making so many things happen, helping kids foster along. And I often thought that person needed a stipend, an additional stipend, for the amount of time they spend beyond school hours and weekends, doing fundraisers and prom and all the kinds of things they organize. So it's just something that I would like brought up. Scott may not care to do it, but it's just not ever thought about, and I realized it wasn't appropriate.
Okay, I get some clarification on that point, because I thought that we had made our student government a CTE class.
What?
CTE class?
It is.
So why would we have a teacher and advisor in the student government high school?
It wouldn't be. It's the same person that does it.
I didn't know that.
She's asking for an additional stipend for them as that person.
Okay.
Because it's a class period and they're not being part of this stipend piece.
It's just, I think Scott would have to, or would have to bring it up. It's up to him whether he wants to do it or not, but I just think we should all be flexible aware of it.
But no.
Any other questions on that one? The next one is 4.1.7. This is the regulation on move on when reading. And so for the third grade move on when reading, promotion and retention of students. These are some technical changes to this policy, or to this regulation, excuse me, which addresses basically that for those students who are at risk of reading below grade level, they are required to be assessed, and we assess with the DIBELS in grades K1 and 2 so we can see if they're making appropriate progress. And what this does is it qualifies slightly the change in the notification to parents, that it be a specific written notification specific to that student regarding what the student's individual needs are, and not a generic letter that's just sent out, they're in danger of not moving forward. And then it requires that we offer more than one evidence-based intervention strategy and more than one remedial strategy for those students. The other technical change on this is it changes the word test to assessment in the first paragraph, and this came again as our recommendation. What we have done is gone through the remaining part of the regulation and conformed with that and changed test to assessment, even though that was not a part of that recommendation from CSBA or ASBA. And then finally on page 3 of 3, if the student is retained, I'm not doing that. If the student is retained, that the student would be assigned to a different teacher, and that teacher who the student is reassigned to must be a top performing teacher, either in the 1 or 2 top performance categories for that student who is retained. So those are the changes to the regulation.
First of all, on page 1 of 3, especially new C, there will be costs associated with that. And then on page 3 of 3, there will be costs for that, for those services. How will they be absorbed? Not all of the elementary schools are Title I.
Correct.
So this will apply to all elementary schools. So I'm especially looking on page 3 of 3, those that could be, this cost could be significant. And
In relation to making sure they have a top performing teacher?
no, I would, intensive reading instruction that occurs before, during, or after the regular school day, or any combination. If they don't have a reading teacher, a pull-out program at that school, and then assigned to a different teacher. I mean, every school is organized in a different way, and their top teacher may not. I mean, I think this can be hard to pull off in some schools. Online reading instruction, and the other thing at the very top, at the very top of that page, it just says shall include, and it doesn't say at least one of the following items. So we should specify.
On which page are you in?
Page 3 of 3.
At the very top.
There, the last sentence at the top says the intervention and remedial strategies developed by the SBE shall include. I wish it said at least one of the following interventions, but it doesn't. So it suggests that, to me, that they're asking you to do A, B, C, and D. And just because they didn't put it in the language doesn't mean that was the intention.
Right.
But it says here on page 2, in the beginning of that sentence, it says the governing board shall offer more than one of the intervention and remedial strategies developed by the State Board of Education.
Okay, that's true. So
And
now
so it's whatever out of this list that the State Board of Education puts together that then becomes 1, 2, or 3, or however many options the State Board of Education lays out.
So then it's even going to be more expensive because they're going to have to be at least 2. So, for example, if you put who's going to pay for putting a child in summer school and an intensive reading program in summer school, and all this has to be organized and that kind of thing. And there will be a cost. There'll be bus transportation to pick the child at home. We normally don't do that for summer school. And that's just what I'm asking to anticipate. But the one I'm most concerned about is page 2 of 3, and it's the paragraph after C, It says a pupil may not be retained if data regarding the pupil's performance on the state-required assessment is not available before the start of the following academic year. Well, okay, fine. But what if the parent wants the child retained? It should say without parent permission or without parent request. If a parent requests it, then certainly we should be able to keep that child back. But this is
Don't we
very...
have another retention policy?
Only because I worked with Mr. Gardner on this.
Mhm.
Retention is up to the teacher. Parents have no say.
But now this says a child must not be retained.
Well, it says may not, and in the way I'm reading it is may not is there's latitude there. If it said shall not, that would be a different story. That's how I read
Correct,
it.
yeah, that is a may.
So it says may.
Well,
So
if
if the parent can convince the teacher that they should be retained, then they shall.
Decision. Late in kindergarten. That's the only opportunity the parents really have to do that. Otherwise, the teacher makes that decision. And I'm certain that if that is in consultation with parents and looking at all of the data that's available. The move on when reading is very specific because a student cannot be promoted if they do not meet the criteria for the move on when reading. And so that's part of the issue. There's also some information in here that talks about that there can be other evidence used to show that the student is reading so that it's not based on just one assessment. And so for us, we can use the Dibbles data, we can use classwork, other kinds of things as evidence of the student's ability to read. As far as the intervention goes, we do have reading intervention. We have a regular reading program, we have the phonics-based program for the primary grades, and we have intervention programs at all of our schools. What we don't necessarily have is a reading specialist at all of our schools. And so the reading specialist would then do some additional intervention with individual groups. We currently only have one school that does not have an interventionist, and that school has a different program that is technology-based intervention and has parapros that are working with that program. So there is an additional intensive intervention program at each of our school sites, including the non-Title I, and the intervention materials that are consistent. The summer school program, I don't want to speak out of line on that one because I'm not exactly sure. We do offer summer school for reading for this purpose, and I don't believe that we have to provide transportation. I believe that's the parent's responsibility. However, I also am not sure if we allow non-title students. Do either of you know?
It is open because they usually host it at one of the title schools so that they can utilize title funds to support the program.
But then any student who meets those criteria can attend.
I read this over, and I think it's procedurally it's fine. I don't see a problem. But I do have a question. I'd sort of like to know how many we actually retain. There's 4 ways we can exempt them, and I'm wondering how many we actually hold back. You can write great procedural orders, but if you're not intending to retain anybody, then they're not worth the paper they're written on. So I'd sort of like to know what our retention percentage is.
That would be a great indicator of cost as well.
Hmm?
That would be a great indicator of cost as well.
Well, if you do this, don't just look at 3rd grade retention. Right. Go back and look kindergarten, 1st and 2nd.
I was going to say, most of those students who are
Have already
retained
been.
are retained earlier to catch them up. By 3rd grade, we aren't typically retaining them.
Right.
In fact, I don't think we've actually retained them at 3rd grade for reading at this point because of the earlier retentions that occur. But we can get that data. I know we have it, I just don't have it handy.
Yeah, it may not be a big deal. I'm just saying it's something I'd like to look at just because of the fact that we've got the procedure, but the procedure doesn't mean anything if we're not doing it.
We had very few students who met the criteria under the move on with reading, and most of those actually were eligible to move on because they were excluded based on the other things that are in here. They had an IEP or they had been previously retained. So.
Any other questions? So would you like this pulled out for a
No.
separate? No? Okay.
No, but I want to be able to discuss it.
Absolutely. All right, section 5 is old business, and we have on this one a request to award the bid for the server or the virtualization project, a revision in that from 193.8 to 2097. And the rationale behind that is that we did not include the tax when we brought that estimate to the board. And I just need to say, frankly, it got by all of us without realizing that the tax was not included in the bid.
Not Patty.
Not Patty. Not Patty. And so that is the difference in this bid, is it does include the sales tax. Section 6, which is new business, we have our first item is the approval of the agreement between our district and Mojave County Community College District for our dual enrollment courses. And I believe that that agreement was sent out to board members, if you have any questions
This
on
is in
that.
my wheelhouse. And I understand that there have been some modifications made to allow us to teach dual credit without people holding a master's degree in the subject matter. And we may survive with that, but technically, that's not certified. And I'm sure that MCC's made adjustments to allow for that. But if I was you, I would check on that to make sure.
Yeah, we've actually had a couple of meetings in regard to that because of the different qualifications that some of our staff have.
I just want to mention it.
We've been working with Dr. Woods from MCC, and in fact, most recently, it was about like 2 weeks ago that you guys met to talk about that as well and what our plan would be. Thank you. Item 6.2 is our approval to purchase 3 school buses. And we do have Mr. Cairns here if you have any questions about, how many school buses?
10.
10? I think we're going to approve 3 tonight.
Nice try, Bob.
Love it. Good.
So,
I have a question.
Yes.
Are all of these new buses, are they used?
Oh, yeah, we're not getting rid of anything, and everything we're purchasing is going to be used.
Everything's used?
No, they're new.
brand new.
They're brand new.
Has that ever happened before in our district, that we've been able to purchase new buses?
Oh, sure.
We
Sure.
have
The last
purchased
time we just purchased 2 2014s 3 years ago.
Okay.
And then the last new purchase before that was 10 years ago we purchased
The
4.
years I was in the district, we've never purchased any buses.
Yeah, most of them that we've had that are still out there were purchased used.
And the other question I have, I see that they have AC system alternator.
Mhm.
Do they all have air conditioners?
Mm-hmm.
They all have air
Yes.
conditioners? That's
Yeah,
new, too.
I purposely, I have a specific package that we purchase for our town. I get the largest compressor, the largest condenser. I mean, the biggest thing that I can get through Transarctic and Carrier to put on our buses is what we've had for the last, since our 2007s that we purchased 10 years ago. We purchased that unit. The thing that they have improved on, which I'm very happy about, the way the unit works, it is very efficient, but the thing that's a struggle is obviously with our high temperatures. The unit doesn't move air like it should. You're trying to cool down 250 square feet of space with 70 kids in there. So it does struggle, especially when the temperature is hot. But they have made some, Transarctic has made some advancements in the volume of air that they're able to move through the system. The 2 that we just purchased a few years ago, they actually work really well. It's the same system, other than the fact the internal units are different. The fans are different. They're pushing more volume of air, larger squirrel cages, and so on and so forth. So I mean, it's still the same system, but they are getting better and better. Each year they kind of seem to find something to move more air, and that's been the biggest trick, is to try to move air.
My last question is, when I was in the district, we purchased used buses, and then they lasted us, I'm not going to say how many miles, but they lasted us about 10 or 15 years
Sure.
after we'd already purchased them. How many years, not miles, because I see what the warranty is, but how many years would you think that these buses will be operable?
Well, the typical rotation is 10. I mean, that's the kind of the typical turnover as far as, you know, a basic life expectancy, but we have buses out there that are 14, 15, 16 years old. At times they are nickel dime headaches, I'll be honest. I mean, because there's a few of them that are getting way up there as far as age, mileage, and everything else. So I mean, it does eat into a maintenance budget as far as trying to keep them going. But this warranty that's on here too, this is pretty much basic standard as far as their 3-year limited, 3-year, and then the 12-year, 1-year basic. The part that's kind of cool is that I've been able to kind of get a pretty good rapport with our Cummins dealer and our Bluebird dealer. Like right now I have one of our new ones, one of our 14s with an AC control panel problem. It's out of warranty. They just gave me a $700 part for free. So I mean, we've got that rapport with what we're doing. You know, I'll probably have to go buy somebody lunch someday, but that's okay. I mean, I've been able to kind of get that kind of rapport with our different people to where I can kind of work out some deals to still get a longevity warranty down the road. You know, especially if it's something where like I can get the part basically for free and then we do the labor. I don't have a problem doing that. So I mean, you know, and I've done that with Cummins, I've done it with Meritor, I've done it with Allison as well. So I've been able to kind of do that with our different representatives for our equipment that has saved us money.
Thank you.
So,
I'm trying to remember under the bond, is these 3 buses all we're looking at in the near future purchase?
three per year.
3 per year.
Right, for the next 10.
Is it possible that, no hurry about this, but is it possible that you can provide us with a rotation schedule, what you intend to retire and what you intend to keep operational?
Oh, for sure. Right away, I'm not going to retire anything because of the expansion to high school. Of the 3 buses, we're doing 2 travel buses, 1 in-town route bus. The 2 travels that I'm replacing are going to become high school route buses. So I mean, we're not going to get rid of anything right away because I want to make sure of, and it's kind of just my pet peeve of just making sure once we get something that it is right, correct, so on and so forth. The different EPA standards that are put on us now with all the different regen systems, the particulate filter systems for the basically smog control, they've fine-tuned it over the last few years to where it's pretty problem-free, but I don't want to trust it until I've used it. You know what I mean? I don't want to send kids out, you know, to Yuma and have it break down in Parker. I want to be able to kind of play with it a little bit myself, make sure that we are right while I'm still under that warranty umbrella. And yeah, I'm not getting rid of anything right away.
Yeah, I guess all I'm saying is, if you can let us know what your estimated retirement date on bus number 16 or whatever it is.
Right.
It sort of gives us a warning that we're looking at a purchase 5, 10, however many years down the road.
Oh, for sure, for sure. Like I say, the average is 10. That's kind of the round number. But the things that I've kind of implemented in our maintenance, though, it does have a cost figure to it, but it's been able to get us 15, 16 years out of some of our equipment. So I mean, you know, we're pretty strict on our maintenance program. You know, so I've been able to get longevity out of the stuff, but it's based off of 10. Like I have right now, I have a 2006 bus that the motor is actually going to probably let go most any day. But it's kind of one of these, I'm going to run it until it breaks. So it is what it is. And then I got to ask Patty for some money. But it's kind of one of these things. But I mean, but I've also got, you know, I've got a 2001 that I'd take to New York right now. So I mean, it's kind of one of them things. You know, you never know until it just gets out on the road and starts getting beat up a little bit.
I would like to clarify on the bond that it's 3 buses for each bond sale, not each year, and for a total of 10.
Oh, right.
Yeah. I knew that's what you meant.
Not 30.
Not 30 buses. Yeah.
Can we get 30?
Wishful thinking.
So, my only thing I'd like from you is I know we put more in these than just an air conditioner as far as climatization of the bus.
Sure.
Can you explain that a little bit more?
Well, like I say, we do the tinted glass along the side windows. I've actually, when we bought our 2007s, when they came to us, I still worked on the floor as a mechanic, and I instantly saw issues that I just disagreed with what they had done. And the interior ducting was not insulated. So you got a bus that's sitting out there in 120-degree heat, it's 150 inside the cabin, you know, and there's nothing to protect that ducting work, you know, I mean, granted, it's still going to be warm regardless, but there's nothing in there. So I've been able to kind of push that scenario to where now that they are insulated, and like I say, we've talked several years over the past few about moving more air, moving volume of air, doing that and so forth. There's now, you know, obviously our point is to make sure the kids are comfortable and safe and so on and so forth, but the hottest seat in the bus is where the driver sits. You know, so they've even went as far as now, right above the driver's head is a separate blower motor that blows right down on the back of the driver. And I'll be honest, it works because it gives you a headache because you get cold sitting there. So I mean, but I like that though too, because then it also keeps that driver alert, comfortable, and aware of what's going on going down the road. So it is a win-win.
Yeah, and does a bus ever leave your yard it's not in working condition?
No way. No way. Won't happen. That's why I have spares.
So I have a question. What do you do with the buses when you do retire them?
We basically put them up for auction. I had, last year we had a 91.
Buses driving around.
Yeah. People have bought them in the past where we've auctioned where they've made them a motorhome. One bus went to Honduras last year. I don't know how far he made it, but because I wouldn't have drove it across town, but because it'd been sitting dormant for about 5 years. And the guy showed up and paid, you know, he paid for it and everything else, did all the work with Patty and whatever, and he got the thing, and away to Texas he was going. I thought, you're crazy.
You obviously never rode a bus in Honduras.
Pretty much. We had one that we auctioned off a while back that went to Hawaii. The last I heard, it was broke down in Palm Springs, so I couldn't tell you. But yeah, we do an auction thing. I mean, and by that time, they're not worth much. Like I say, the ones that we have auctioned off in the past, they have been sitting for several years. I hadn't even had them certified since, oh gosh, probably 2003 or 4. You know, they were basically training buses that we used on the property for new drivers and what have you. I still have one. I have a 92 that's parked over in the corner that we keep because we have to do physical agility training with our drivers and monitors every year. And it still has the old handheld butterfly door on it, and that's part of agility training. So it's not maintained. I don't spend any money on it. We jump start it whenever we need it, and we pull it up to the shop and do agility, and then we go park it. So I mean, it doesn't cost us a dime. It hasn't left the yard in over 10 years. So the tires are kind of square on it, but.
So I just was curious, so does it go like into notice into the newspaper
Yes.
when we're going to do an auction?
Yeah, it's like a full-blown government public auction
Gotcha.
site where it's
Okay.
bid on and everything else.
Thank you.
What do you get for a used bus?
Well, like I say, the ones we sold, I think the highest one was like 4,000 or 5,000. It really wasn't much. But like if you've got a bus that's something that's still certified and certifiable, you could probably get somewhere in the maybe high teens, maybe 20. But still, as far as what's really there, they're not worth a whole lot.
Well, to some people, they
To
are.
some people,
Like
they are.
South America loves
True.
our old school buses.
6.3. This is new. We tried it to see, and you can, if you don't like it, it's not a problem. But we thought we've had so many policies coming in with just technical changes to them. And then we go through them one by one and have separate approvals. So for the policies that we get in that have more or less minor technical changes to them, what we did is we put them into one item, and then there's an index of the page numbers. And we've actually just, Terry went through and typed on page numbers for you so we can see where they are. So we thought we'd try it.
And we got the document from Terry.
Yes. And so in looking at these policies, on all of these are under 6.3. The first one is board member qualifications, where there is a technical change in that not only no employee of the district, it clarifies what no employee of the district means for running for board. Then the next one is the bus driver requirements. It is now law that our bus drivers submit an identity verified fingerprint card. And so for new drivers, that is effective right away. For existing drivers, that is going to be phased in over time. In the next policy, the actual change is not until, let me find it here, page 11, or 9 of 10 on that particular policy, but page 11 total here. And what this adds is information about, because we do have teachers who work under a short-term certification, such as an intern certificate or an emergency teaching certificate. And so this provides the clarification that if the permit or the certification is valid for 1 year or less, they may be dismissed by the board effective 10 days after a notice of dismissal. The next policy on page 14, there is the addition as well under our support staff requirements for bus drivers, certification verified fingerprint card. And of course the reference on page 16. On page 17 is the organization of instruction. And what this does is it clarifies that the district may offer, should they choose to do so, vocational ed programs beyond secondary to adult students.
I've got a question. It says the high school graduates or those who obtain their GED. Are we sort of taking on the role of a community college here?
We could. In many school districts, the courses that are offered after the regular school day, that are CTE courses, could also be attended by adults should you have a policy that allows them to do so.
But we don't do that now.
We do not, as far as I know.
And before if we were to do it, would that need to come before the board to approve it? Because I would not myself vote to do that. To have older students on the high school grounds. I just think the potential for problems is too much.
Yeah, if we were going to offer any courses, that would come to you. That would be on page 18 is a change in the wording on the textbooks for high schools. Because common schools are K through 8, and so this also clarifies that for high schools, they must be placed on display for at least 60 days prior to the meeting at which they will be considered for adoption. That was not in the past. On page 20, on the readmission of students, there's, or the admission of resident students, excuse me, there's as the students who are students of military clarification.
So, let me just go back to the textbooks a second. It says here they'll be retained for at least 60 days in the district office. Do we have the space to retain those as long as they're being used by the high school?
It's supposed to be on a table in this room where anybody can come in during the day and look at it.
But what I'm getting at is it says for 60 days.
Right.
What I'm saying is, what if I suddenly stand up and decide I want to go take a look at the economics textbook? Do I have to go to high school to see it?
Right now, for the existing textbooks that are currently adopted, you would have to do that.
Right.
We don't keep those here. This is for new adoptions, so these would be for preview. And if the textbook was adopted, then it would be housed at the high school, purchased for the high school, but if it was not, that would be the end of it.
Okay, we'll talk. I just think if we had the space for the bookshelf, having the textbooks that are currently used by the district here would be beneficial, but that's just my thought.
That's a lot of books.
Yeah. That's a very large bookshelf. It's a very large bookshelf.
Very large district.
On page 20, again, this is I think I mentioned that one already, the military transfer pending, and the references are updated. On page 23 is the credit for graduation requirements that allows there was a technical change in legislation in terms of that we have to consider all transcripts, but it does allow the district to evaluate the transcripts of any transfer students to whether or not we're going to assign the credit for those classes. And so that's defined in the actual ARS.
I'm not aware. Do we have a regulation on transfer credits that are or are not transferable? For instance, somebody comes in with a D, do we accept that as a transfer of credit?
As far as I know, I shouldn't answer that. We have, I know we have language on that, but we do. And I don't know that it delineates between grades themselves, but it does state that we have to have a comparable class offered at our high school that we would be able to accept it as. We don't just accept batch and weaving.
I just asked because I know like in college, Ds aren't accepted, you can't transfer from one discipline to another. I just didn't know how we would be able to do it here.
I'm trying to think, I haven't looked at that in a long time, so I'm not even going to promise you about the grades, but
We can check on that.
we can check on it. I haven't looked at that in a long time.
And then on the open enrollment policy, the change on page 27 is a deletion because the desegregation is no longer an issue. On the student wellness policy on page 30, this is a new law allowing students to carry sunscreen. I did insert, and I wanted the board to be aware, I inserted non-aerosol.
You don't want to be fire starters?
No fire starters, no spraying each other in the eyes.
That's good.
That was not in the recommendation. So I did want you to be aware that was insertion on our behalf. Good job. They were fun, but. And then on the policy on parental involvement, on page 33, this is the addition, because it talks about textbooks in grades 8, K through 8, so this adds in the previewing on the high school textbooks as well. And those are the policies that would come into that item.
I have a question. Page 1 of 10.
Can you give me the other number at the bottom?
3. Page 3.
Page 3.
On the parental involvement?
This is on the discipline, suspension, dismissal?
Yes. Okay, I've got 2 questions. One refers to item K, to certified staff members may be disciplined for infractions that include, but not limited to, the following categories, and K is engaging in the illicit use of narcotics or habit-forming drugs. Does that include recreational use? If we see a teacher has been arrested for, during the weekend, can we discipline that
We
teacher?
can.
Okay, all right. Do they know that by reading this statement?
They also have to sign paperwork when they are hired that goes into more detail about what they can and can't do regarding that topic.
Okay, and then R, carrying or possessing a weapon on school grounds unless they are peace officers or have obtained specific authorization from the appropriate school administrator. I think that they should have to obtain authorization. The school principal can request that, and that either you grant it or the board grants it. But I am not comfortable with leaving that decision up to a school administrator simply because there is no way any of us would even know that that could happen if the school principal had authorized that. And I'm just not comfortable with it.
This is policy, within the procedure on this, if the administrator were to approve the weapon, would that be something that would then be reported up the chain of command?
At this point, we do not have a policy from our board that allows anyone to carry a gun. And so if that's the weapon that we're talking about, that would not be an approved weapon. What I was thinking of with this would be in certain knives, or if you were using something as a demonstration for history class, or...
Well, we have the public safety class now, I've talked to Steve and the word taser came up.
I bet.
Right, so that would be another example, a taser.
Or mace.
Even a PR-24, a club.
Yeah, so those are the other kinds of weapons. Guns are not included in this, although it says peace officers because they do carry
They carry more than
sticks and,
just-
yeah.
Okay.
And I think she has a good point.
I'm sorry?
I think she has a good point, though. I think, for instance, if Steve Aarons is going to come in with his PR-24, if he's going to teach that class, we should approve what he can bring into it. And then the rest of the year, he can bring it in. But I don't think it should be a principal's option. It says administrator. I think it should have to come before at least the superintendent, possibly the board, which weapons are going to be allowed to be brought. You follow what I'm saying?
I do. I'm thinking about, do we already have a policy on that somewhere? Do you know, either of you? Or Terry, on weapons?
We do have a weapon policy for students.
Right.
Do we have one for staff? Do we have one for classroom guidance?
Just that this is a weapon-free, just the state one that says this is a weapon-free.
Subjective term, too. My problem with it is it's a subjective term. What is a weapon? How do we actually classify a weapon? Somebody's pocket knife may be something that they use in their daily work and could also be construed as a weapon at the same time. Is it a tool or is it a weapon?
But I don't think it would, like I say, in Steve's case, I don't think it hurt him to put in a letter saying, throughout this class, I will need to bring in a stun gun, a PR-24, this and this, at various points of my instruction.
Wouldn't we be, if that's a point of instruction, wouldn't the district be providing those items?
Probably not.
I doubt it.
I think we need to check with Marcia Becker to find out what the curriculum entails. There
Yeah.
might not even be a situation where that's going to happen. So probably that would be the first step.
And as far as guns go, the administrator can't approve those anyway because the state has a restriction on them.
No.
I don't think so. That's